Guest still is Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations. And we're looking at, the subject is democracy. George Weah sets example for Africa, but it must be said, Mr. Mohammed has called in from Abuja and has taken a bit of an exception to that caption, saying, what about our own President Goodluck Jonathan? In his own time too, he set an example. But this is the narrowest of margins, and incumbent President George Weah went on air and he first of all called his co-contestant, congratulated him, and then invited all of Liberia to follow his example and support and endorse the winner of the election, even if that winner was something like only 1% away from him. Mr. George, good morning to you, sir, and thank you for holding on.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to the top diplomats.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, the example George Weah has just said is not new, like Mr. Mohammed said. What happens is that the political actors are greedy. That is the reason why they don't accept results. So it depends on the character of the person concerned. Look at President Jonathan, like was already pointed out. He saw that this election, he cannot win it, and decided to do the needful by calling the winner, even before it was announced. But what happened after he handed over? You can see the litigations upon litigations that have followed subsequent elections in the same country where a sitting president had set that example. Even the recent one, the person who came second said he won. The one who came third said he won. So who is actually the winner out of the two that are contesting? You came third in an election and you said you won, that if you are not sworn in, you will burn the country. Is that from dignity? Is that one from civility? Is that one from fairness? George Weah, if I may recall, is from a country called Liberia, where Charles Taylor did not want democracy to thrive. I know what Nigeria did. They had to find a way to ease him out of the country, brought him to Lagos. He stayed here for about 3 years to enable democracy to take root there. Now, in that same Liberia, you can see another character came and has set this kind of example. The point I'm trying to make is that it is about the character of the person and not the system per se, not because the due process was not followed or the electoral process was not followed. Look at America. They are 253 years old in democracy. Only in 2020 here, somebody came out. He lost an election, and he said he won. See, today he is still causing trouble in America. It is because of Donald Trump that you are now seeing people just walk into a supermarket and shoot 30 people down, go to a school and kill children. Just integrating the society into insecurity and unsafe mode because you did not win an election. That is happening in America that we are all pointing to. So it's about who the person is, not necessarily a flawed system. We should look at ourselves, whether we want to be leaders or not. George Weah, I remember, he made a lot of money from football. His upbringing, he has spent decades in where, democracy thrives. So he has probably already imbibed that standard in his life. I'm aware that he spent about half of the money he made in football to care for the poor people of Liberia before that, long before that election that he won. So he doesn't see it as a do or die. He sees it as a form of service. Okay, if this mode of service doesn't work, I can still serve in any other way. This should be the attitude that people should take away from this example he has set.
Okay.
Not coming to blame the system. It's not the system, it's the people.
All right, then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. Mr. Ambassador, that's another point that's been brought up there. The caliber of people, has been brought up, and I know this is something of a delicate one because Africa has seen so many different types of leaders. But now, apparently Liberia, has been blessed along the lines that that caller, Mr. George, enumerated. But I don't know how you would comment on the point that he makes, that a lot will depend on the character of the people involved, never mind the system. What would you say to that? That because we often hear that we should build institutions, build institutions, build institutions. Okay, we have our institutions, but apparently he's saying that depending on the character, there are characters who could come and scuttle institutions in Africa.
Yes, he was quite right, and you are also right in following that up. Institutions are inanimate subjects or objects. They are given spirit and animation by people who occupy them. And invariably, the character of institutions take the character of the people who are manning those institutions at any given time. So in our own case, we have seen how the evolution of governance in Nigeria has become something else in terms of delivery of service, adherence to rule of law, and actually in terms of advancing the constitution of our country. So we have had very challenging moments whereby there is a disproportionate use of power by people who are called cabals, unseen people behind the government and so forth. And then the elected representatives abdicating their responsibility in terms of speaking out in favor of upholding the rule of law and the constitution and adherence to the rules and regulations of public service. So in that way, improvisations and deficiencies come in, corruption takes hold, and before you know it, governance has become problematic.
Indeed.
But democracy is nurtured by certain factors. Number one, the quality of laws that you have in the land. Number two, the type of people who are manning institutions like INEC, like the police, like the military, like the civil service, the judiciary, and so forth. And number three, the type of people you elect into offices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nigeria, we seem to be lacking vetting processes.
One moment, Your Excellency. Let me bring in Reverend Dominic, who has been waiting to join the program. Sorry for interrupting you. Okay. Good morning, Reverend Dominic. Reverend Dominic?
Yori, can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Go on.
Good morning.
Good morning, Reverend.
Good morning to your guest. Yeah, good morning. Yori, I want to believe and I want to start where my friend George stopped. This argument I've been on it for years. Who built an institution? Man of institution. Institution is an office. It's a document called paper, called constitution. It is a man that built the institution, not the institution of man. The class of a man in office makes the difference in the office. I want to change the topic this morning. The topic is supposed to read this way, that George Weah has followed the footsteps of former president of Nigeria.
Reverend Dominic, are you still there? Reverend Dominic, are you still there? Oh dear. But what Reverend Dominic just said, I heard that if he were to cast our headline this morning, he would cast it along the lines of Weah follows Nigeria's footsteps. Weah follows Goodluck Jonathan's example. I heard that bit, that much, before he was cut off. Yes, Mr. Ambassador?
In my opening remarks, I referred to President Goodluck Jonathan's example, actually, of 2015, by conceding to His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, and that gave respectability and credibility to the electoral process. And up till today, both Nigerians and the international community are praising President Jonathan and giving him that respect which he brought into the office at the end of his tenure. He did not fall into the temptation of continuing willy-nilly by hook or by crook. But he said, look, this is not a do-or-die affair. I love my country, I love my people. I would not like to see one person's life taken on my account. I would not like to see one drop of human blood spilled on my account. I better give up than to sit in office and cause chaos and confusion in my country. That is what he did, and that is what today transpired in Liberia. And I think, other countries too should follow in those processes. And once countries fall in line behind this philosophy of conceding defeat, especially when they see the writing on the wall, it will augur well for our continent in terms of the maturity of democracy and also in the way leaders emerge.
Indeed.
Let us not forget that George Weah is still a young man, relatively by African standards.
Yes.
If he can still come back into politics, either to lead his party in parliament or actually to contest for the presidency again.
Indeed. And
sorry,
Mr. Ambassador, as you said,
yeah.
George Weah, relatively speaking, is a young man in African terms, and the person that that Liberians have now voted into office is a 78-year-old that they voted in.
Yes.
They voted in a 70. Yes. They said, "Okay, Mr. Young Man, thank you very much. You tried." Yeah. We now give our mandate to an elder. But Benga in Abuja, good morning to you, sir.
Benga, good morning. My name is Benga. Good ambassador.
Good morning, sir.
And just like George has said, individual matters. Some politicians are very desperate, and that even when they know that there is failure, and when they see failure glaring at their face, they won election. Like look at the recent election at the Imo State. And number 3, who scored about 40-something thousand votes, over %. He said no, congratulate him, and that he wants to go to court to challenge the election. You can see that. Remember, that they look at it, they cannot accept defeat. And also, apart from individuals, the supporters also add to it. In our last election, Obi came third. Before the election, there were polls that were putting Obi that Obi will win. Those polls, they would say 60% have not decided. And the Guardian supporters will not ask if the 60% decide, where would the vote? Now, during the election, the 60% actually won the election. But because of those euphoria, those hard will be very hard for them to swallow the defeat. So that and accept defeat. Men, all the so-called men of God go to church and be prophesying to Obi that you will be the winner of this and that. When they are hearing such things and see defeat, you will not want to challenge it. You will not congratulate because of pride and ego, congratulate the winner. That you know that you really truly in one. Because of that, they came with frivolity to the court, thinking that they can get what they want by what they could not get at the to frivolity in the court. It's a drug baron. Abuja is 25%. Abuja is not getting 25%. It's a lot of things that could not that decided a long time ago. And we thought even up to now they cannot accept the daddy. Could you remember that the former SGF government, Babashi Lawan, that he win that election? We now ask how many votes that make him to be the leader. He will be the couple called the millions of votes that make him the winner. See, like sometimes in society, supporters also make it difficult for the loser to defeat because of egoism and some other all fake and fake food. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Benga in Abuja. Mr. Ambassador, let me bring up the point again that you stated that George Weah, relatively speaking, in African terms, is a young man. He's a 57-year-old. But the people of Liberia have voted a 78-year-old. What would be your commentary on that? Since everybody is now talking about, it seems that the shift, people would say that tomorrow belongs to the youth. Yeah, and there are a lot of youth in Liberia as well. But if the people now freely voted a 78-year-old following, even though they first of all voted a 57-year-old in 2017, what does that say, just sort of using these figures?
Yes, you are right to bring that up. Interestingly, we have to note that the population of Liberia is predominantly young, between 15 and 19, 15, 18, 19, thereabout, nearly 50% of the population. And also, we have to bear in mind that Liberia is also compartmentalized into ethnic groups, different ethnic groups, including the Americo-Liberians.
Yes.
So it's like a microcosm of Nigeria. But what happened here is the replacement of a younger person with an older person, as you pointed out. And I think what happened was that the promises made by George Weah during his first term election was to bring harmony into society, which he had achieved to some extent, stabilize the country, which he had achieved to some extent, but he failed manifestly, I think, in eradicating corruption as he promised and reducing poverty in the country. And these are not his faults. He had done his best. The economy of the country was virtually in tatters when he took over the government, or had a problem when he inherited the government from Madam Saleh. So it is important for us to contextualize those factors, why they preferred an elder person to a younger person. I think they were looking for a steady hand, an experienced hand, and you remember Ambassador Weah was also a vice president.
Yes.
So looking for that in order to bring back a sense of maturity, a sense of experience, a sense of stability into the government.
And he has been a career politician.
And career politician, exactly, and also who has been a diplomat. So it's important that they also, I think, understand the necessity to have somebody here who can bring international goodwill into the country by way of investment, by way of partnerships, by way of development, and so forth. So the Liberians, I am happy to note, are savvy in terms of politics. They are very much aware of their responsibilities, their rights. Virtually the whole country, they speak their form of Pidgin English. So they have a way of communicating on social media and radio and newspapers in a common language.
Indeed.
And also, the capital, Monrovia, plays a critical part in the politics of the country. Monrovia actually serves like the wind vane or the barometer of politics in Liberia. So it is important for us to realize that the change happened in Monrovia and the neighboring provinces to bring in a new leadership based on the that corruption and poverty, twin evils that must be fought in that country.
Okay then. Uche in Nnewi, good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, good morning, the gentleman there. I can't remember your name now.
That is Ambassador Sarki.
I remember your name, Uche.
The ambassador remembers your name.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please, Mr. Uche in Nnewi.
Yeah, this is Uche calling from Nnewi. Yeah, Mr. Yori.
Please continue.
It's a two-edged sword. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's a two-edged sword. One is the character of the personality, and secondly is the umpire, the electoral umpire. The truth of the matter is that some of these elections, these so-called elections are too symbolic that you cannot ignore. And the right-sensing somebody cannot admit, I cannot agree to that just because he wants to be a gentleman. No, by the time you start allotting figures to a candidate, and you now expect the person to agree with you, who does that?
Okay then. Mr. Uche, I beg your pardon. Thank you very much for calling in. We've run out of time, and I do want the ambassador to comment on your submission. There you go. We take all sorts of opinions, Mr. Ambassador, and Uche just called in that, well, there are limits to wanting to be a gentleman, as he puts it.
Well, the rule of law doesn't distinguish between a gentleman and a rogue. It's only when you perpetuate an action that the rule of law applies. So let us all be gentlemen and women in terms of respecting the rule of law,
yes,
whether in electoral periods or not. And secondly, let us respect our elected leaders. No matter their shortcomings, they are still our leaders. If we continue undermining them, criticizing them, how do you think other leaders from outside will see them when they interact with them? So it is very important that the respectability, credibility, and integrity of leaders are protected by us first and foremost, before they are accorded the same privilege and respectability by others.
indeed.
And the other issue is for the electoral process in Nigeria to be mindful.
Oh, it looks like the connection went a bit wonky there. But let me just use the opportunity to say we've run out of time anyway, and I do want to thank His Excellency Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, who has been our guest today and has been commenting on the situation in electoral situation in Liberia. And also to sort of remember, Mohammed started it and others have endorsed Mohammed's position that he would have cast our headline as Liberia follows Nigeria's example. That is to say that George Weah follows President Jonathan's example in doing the right thing. So I just want to say thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for making time for us. We really appreciate it.